right, welcome. This is Diane Darling. I am the author of the Networking Survival Guide, Networking for Career Success, as well as the curator of a self-published book called She Said It. And a few weeks ago, I got a tweet from a lovely woman named Leslie Howard saying she had done the voiceover for my book on Audible, and I was thrilled but surprised because I had no idea this was going to happen. So kudos to Leslie, and I want to introduce you to her, and we're going to do a little chat here on how she became a voiceover artist, or whatever your term is, and it's a fun networking story. So Leslie, tell me how you got this gig.
Hi. Well, I was at a industry event where I was meeting casting directors from different publishers, and had the opportunity to meet several casting directors from Tantor Audio. And later on, I followed up with them over email, and they said, yeah, we have a book for you. and it was your book, The Networking Survival Guide. And so I thought, well, that's a good sign. I guess.
Absolutely. So how did you find out about this event? Because one thing you probably remember from the book is I have something called the weather report, which is whether or not you go. You homeschooled 6 children.
Yes.
One, how did you find the time to do this? And why did you pick that event versus any other event you could go to?
Okay. Well, I gradually carved out more time for my work narrating, and got my family used to it little by little. As I was getting more success with books, everyone could see that was helping us, and they've been very supportive. I'm a member of a group called the APA, Audiobook Publishers Association, and this speed dating, it's called speed dating event, is one of the events that they do. And I basically sent in an audition, and you hope that you get picked. So I took a trip to Manhattan for it around Christmas time. I brought my oldest daughter, she's 21, with me. So afterwards we went and, saw some of the sights in New York and saw the Rockettes. So I tried to, pack it all in.
So you did some networking with your daughter as well as networking for work.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I've helped her. She's an artist, and I've taken her around to some galleries and stuff when I'm in town there as well. So yeah, just try to keep it all moving together.
So I narrated one book, my Networking for Career Success, the little one, and I found it to be a lot of work. And I also found myself wanting to edit my book. And so, as I was speaking, so when you're reading somebody else's words, how do you get yourself into their head, or, just be authentic for their story? I mean, this isn't a story per se, but just to that.
Yeah, well, I'll read it ahead of time, and I will, especially with nonfiction, I'll look up the person online, and I watched videos of you speaking and stuff like that to help me. And yeah, I just find that I guess it might be similar in the way writing a book takes on a sort of life for you when you're working on it. The books I narrate, take on a little life is inside of me. So there's a certain energy associated with it, and that I try to carry through.
So when you're reading a book, because I find this when I'm speaking, I want to redo it, in live speaking engagements, obviously you can't do that. Recordings you can. Do you do multiple takes? I remember when I was recording my own, and then I had somebody help me out doing the editing. They said, if you mess up, just stop and give me a chance to pause so I can pick up those pieces and kind of edit out that silent part.
Right.
What are some things that you would encourage either other voiceover artists or other publishers who are looking to find you? What are some things that you've learned from that? So this is your first book, right, that you did?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I've done close to 50.
Oh, you've done, okay.
Somewhere in the 40s.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I use a method called punch and roll recording.
Okay.
So, for this book, I was in my home studio, which I have been for almost all of the books. I've done a few in studio with a director. And so that's different. They take care of redoing things and, stopping the recording or however they do it.
Okay.
But at home, I have my hand on the shortcuts, a couple floating over the buttons on the keyboard. And if I don't like how something came out, and sometimes it's in the expression of how I said it. Other times I hear a little sound in my voice, and I try to produce as clear a product as I can. There's a lot they can do in editing.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't know what they'll end up taking out or not and fixing. So I try to
Okay. Yeah.
put in the best quality. So I hear my voice made a little click or something, and I'll just hit undo, and it'll, go back, or, I'll stop it, click back to where I want to go, and start recording again. And sometimes I'll go for a while, or sometimes I'll get stuck on a line trying to get it right,
Yeah. Yeah. I when I think about this, I remember the movie The King's Speech, where he would learn how to emphasize different things. If there were words that tricked him up, he would rewrite the sentence. At this point, it's obviously been written. But, and what were some of the things you learned from my book? I'm curious to know. It's a vanity question, I'll admit, but I'm just curious things that you found most interesting when you were learning about this topic.
Well, there were several things, from, little things to like overall things, really. In general, I love narrating nonfiction because you can learn while you're working.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like a really beautiful thing. So this was perfect. And I even have other narrator friends who said they were going to get this because it really applies to the kind of work we do, running our own businesses as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And the way you talk about networking online, which has only grown, and how much we're doing that, but then also going and meeting those people in person. And that is really the key to success in working with publishers and stuff in audiobooks. It's those two things together. They want to meet you in person too, because they want to get a feel for what you're like, to help to cast you even, and just it makes you memorable. So
I remember when the book was done, I had not met in person my editor. And so I wanted him, when the book was done, he said, "So just put it in the mail." I'm like, I'm not putting my baby in the mail. I felt like I had given birth to something.
Yeah.
Not like the way you have with 6 children, but, and so I took the train from Boston to New York and met him in person at Penn Station, which is where McGraw-Hill's offices were. I forget if they're still there or not, but and we went to lunch. We went to breakfast. I got an early train, and it was 10 o'clock. I think we had a breakfast because I was on the 6 a.m. train. And it was interesting because he said I was I think maybe the first author who had done that. And I thought, well, why would I not meet you in person? Because, we're going to talk about editing and critiquing. And I had all this vision of, I'd done bad things. And, and then he came back and, we had an hour conversation about it. But it was so interesting, as you said, to have that meeting in person. Because and when I first wrote the book, which is frightening to think that there was actually a life before Facebook, but Facebook even wasn't around when I first was writing the book. It is in the second edition. I think you narrated the second edition.
I did. Yeah.
And so it's interesting to think about that, because I think we do put the royal we put so much emphasis on all of this online conversation. This morning, I have a co-working space nearby that I go to just ever so randomly, and there was a message saying, "Oh, we're doing breakfast." And I thought, why are they telling me this at 9:30 or 9:45? And I have yet to really get dressed and get ready. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to slam on my clothes. I'm going to go and just do that. I had 3 amazing conversations with people. And what was interesting also was these people came in for the breakfast and they had their plates full and they were getting ready to go upstairs and go back to, their little spots. And I shamed them into sticking around. I'm like, you got to sit down for 60 seconds, shake our hands before you go upstairs since you've taken the food. And it was interesting because out of that, we had 2 or 3 really incredible conversations. And I do think we just, in some cases, need to just And it wasn't long. I think maybe it was a half an hour, and we all swapped cards, and, some people had cards and some people didn't. And it was interesting to kind of think about, that personal handshake and that conversation, because, you can have thousands of people on a newsletter list or in a podcast or who read your book. But when you do meet people, and often also one thing I feel is you don't need to meet them many times. In some cases, it's just one or two times,
right,
to have that bond. And when the editor and I had some hiccups later on, I was grateful that we had that in-person conversation, because it made it easier for us to work through some of the bumps later on. So are you working on any new books that you can talk about, or is it kind of under the radar?
Well, I just finished a book called Why Grow Up by Susan Neiman.
Okay.
It's actually a philosophy book.
Okay.
And so it was, it was very intelligently written and tons of words to look up. And I really enjoyed it. Basically, she talked about growing up is really realizing how messed up the world is, like that hard reality of the world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, working toward making it better.
Interesting.
So this seemed pretty timely.
It does seem timely. And I think, books like that, and I would dare say books like mine, are evergreen. They don't age out, the way some books do. And, at the end of the day, when we do want to meet people and talk to people and get to know them, those are really important skills to be able to have, and they're life skills that go on for a long, long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And back to your book, you mentioned handshakes. That was a little thing. You have a section about, having a good handshake is a thing. And I read that. And so as I would read it, sometimes it would be like mental check. Okay, I think I'm pretty good there. I think I'm pretty. And then, remembering names. There's my weak point. But with the handshake, I went and I had to thank my parents for teaching me how to shake hands.
Oh, aren't you lucky they're still here, that you can actually thank them in real on this side of the heaven versus the other side of heaven. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
No, I think about my dad was absolutely emphatic that we have good handshakes. And it's because you remember the weird ones. You don't remember the good ones. You remember the ones that are too long, too strong, too controlling, whatever it might be. It's like, oh, calm down, dude. And, and it's also interesting, I think, for women, we don't shake hands the way men shake hands. Men shake hands before the beer, after the beer, before the game, after the game. Shake hands all the time. And I think it's important for women to shake hands, all the time, to signal the start and the end of a conversation, to make it, one, friendly, but also just very professional, And also it was interesting for me to learn in etiquette that in true proper etiquette, men are taught not to put their hand out. It goes back to Britain. So our etiquette comes from Britain. And so there's a funny scene in Downton Abbey where Maggie
I love that show.
puts his hand out and she literally says he must be an American.
Yeah.
Because a British man would not put his hand out to a woman because it goes to the Queen. You wait for the Queen to put her hand out, and we are all women as we are queens. So we wait, we need to send the signal. Yes, you can touch me. So it's an interesting thing, I think, important for women also, because I don't think some cases women are always as keen on being visible. Men, they'll any chance they can to say how great they are, being in the center of attention, out of their DNA. Whereas I think for us, it's kind of like, oh, we shouldn't be drawing any attention to ourselves.
Yeah.
So, so in addition to voiceover for books, what other work do you do?
I primarily do audiobooks.
Okay.
I'm looking into reaching out into doing e-learning.
Okay.
As well. But I've been pretty busy with the book, so it's going great. It's a really growing industry right now. So I've been really happy to find a nice niche in it where I'm doing work, that I feel like is helping people, and they're really listening. Like, so many times we have a message we want to share with somebody, and it's hard to change people's minds or tell them what you think is so important. But with audiobooks, like, people are actually really listening. So
Well, and as you said, and so I'd also think from a lifestyle perspective for you, it works because, you can then, if your kids need you or there's a game or,
Mm-hmm.
something you've got to do, you can run off and do that and then kind of go back to work after hours or, when
Yeah.
they're
Yeah,
well,
it's
I don't know,
it's
if you're
amazing.
teaching them, you're doing all of it, but maybe when they're
Yeah,
off to a play lesson or something like that.
sure. Yeah, yeah, it's incredibly flexible. And then, I can work from home doing this on my own hours. And then there's these times where I go into a studio or I go to, I have a conference coming up, APAC with the Audio Publishers Association conference. And it's a great thing to be able to go and live in Manhattan in a little apartment and network and go to these great events. It's really like the best of both worlds.
So I'll give you a couple of tips before you go to this conference.
Oh, okay.
So one of the, and you may or may not remember this from the book, but a couple different things is I would go to the conference website and I would take a look, is there anybody you want to meet in advance?
Mm-hmm.
And send them any emails ahead of time and say, I look forward to meeting you.
Hmm.
So what happens is you start the networking before you go to the conference. And
Okay.
then another thing you can do is you take a look at the speakers and then send the speakers an email. And you can find people's emails these days just by Googling their name, email.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how much you can find. And then send them an email and say, is there a question you'd like me to ask during the Q&A?
Ooh.
That's actually not included in the book, but that will be in my next one. But the reason behind that is that after someone speaks, there's ideally applause. And then are there any questions? And it's often silent. And I have found if I break the ice and I'm the first person who asks the question, one, I get to network with the whole room. But
Mm-hmm.
two, the speaker just really appreciates, and frankly, so do the organizers. They really appreciate the fact that I've broken the ice to start that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So some speakers have written me back saying, I haven't ever thought about that before, or, you think of the question, or, some people I never hear from, that's absolutely true. But I have heard from more people than I might have expected on that. The second thing is you definitely want to have some business cards.
Yes. And 2 business card holders.
And 2
right?
business card holders,
Yeah.
you remember from my book, or at least
I
2
got to get my
pockets,
second.
one pocket for inbound and 1 pocket for outbound. The other thing I did recently was I actually got blank cards, and I just went to Staples and I got a card. It was pre-printed saying name, email, and mobile number with my picture and a link for me on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so if somebody forgot a card, I could say, here's a card you can fill in.
Oh.
And I said, grab 5 or 6 if you want to, and then you have a card, because people, I forgot my cards, or I didn't bring my cards, or I don't have cards, or, find me on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I'm never going to remember you, to do the invitation. Please make it easy. So the blank cards has been an interesting thing to do. And then, I would encourage you to use whatever app you use for just keeping your contacts, so you can then make a note of when you met them. So in my database, one of the ones I use is called Zoho, Z-O-H-O. That might be a little bit more complex than some people need, but I have the date I meet you, and that's the date I meet them. And then I have a field called Met Where.
Oh.
Type in, APA conference or Twitter or whatever it might be. And then I can have a follow-up note to send them.
Yeah, I remember that section on organizing your cards after you get back and everything, and I realized I literally had this pile of cards that was slowly getting lost in my mental notes, So I set up a spreadsheet in Airtable, which I found
I love
out
Airtable.
Yeah, at a business conference I was at, and yeah, so I'm trying to do that, and thanks. Yeah, I get it.
And actually, Airtable is a cool tool for that. And also, you can use Evernote to take a picture of the card. If you pay, I think it's $60 a year for Evernote, you get the premium one. And then when you take a picture of the card, it pulls from LinkedIn. And so it will pull those 2 together. And then the nice thing about Evernote is you can then put it as a reminder with the date and what you want to do in little notes. So Evernote can kind of be a little bit like a contact management tool system.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, Leslie, thank you so much. Any other questions or things you want to share?
Let's see. We covered a lot here. One takeaway I had was when we think of being an entrepreneur and networking, a lot of times you're thinking about how to build your business and how to get connections and get what you need. And I felt like you emphasized also giving to people, finding people like you can help and like reaching out to help them.
Yeah.
And that's really being part of a network where, it's a give and take. And yeah, it's harder to measure, but I think that raises your profile as well, and just makes everything better. So
Yeah, and I when I was telling somebody about seeing your tweet, the question that someone said, well, why didn't McGraw-Hill tell you that? I'm like, that's a different question. They're a big company. I don't know that. And it
I
sounded
don't
like
know.
there were multiple people in between.
Mhm.
But but it was interesting because I thought, well, you weren't selling to me. You were just informing me of this thing. So are
Mhm.
you selling? Yes, because I'm going to now let people know they can buy the book. You'll win. I'll win.
Mhm.
McGraw-Hill wins, and a lot of other things go well.
Mhm.
But so to your point, it's you're getting, but you're also giving. When you're saying to somebody, maybe you didn't know, because I didn't know. And I think one thing we often assume is, oh, because we know, everybody else knows.
Mhm.
And that's not always true. Leslie, thank you so much for your time. This has been
You're
really, really
welcome.
a wonderful treat. I really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to sharing this with my audience. And
Yeah,
I
I'll
look
share
forward
it too with your great networking tips for the conference.
That's great. That's great. All right. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much for setting this up. Thank you.
You're so welcome.